Alright, what's cracking with y'all? It's your boy Prince the Hustle Guy, aka Wise the Warlock. It is a cool black affair. Shout out to the mighty LDBC, LDBC only, LDBC everywhere. Guys, this video is about boxing in its current state, the clear agendas. It seems the clearest agenda, like as bright as day, is boxing as a collective is against the most elite black fighters. If you're Derek Chisora, who's fighting Pulev soon, who constantly is coming off of loss after loss after loss. Yes, he gives a good showing, but where he's at, he's praised for being a stepping stone for domestic level UK talent or faltering B level talent. But that's neither here nor there. Or I can't even say that. That's a supporting point, not even any of my major points. But let's dive right into it. When Deontay Wilder was a top contender, I won't even go into his prospect days, but a top contender before he got the WBC title, who he called Sophia, he was just considered wild or terrible. He's not nothing. The collective of boxing, or the fans, the casual fans, white and black, were acting like they would refuse to get behind their undefeated American contender who was showing what hasn't been shown before. The ability to knock everyone out or down who's stepped in front of him at that time out. Then he became champion, and none of the consensus changed. And let me not speed past the fact that the LDBC 7/8 Sports TV, when he founded the LDBC, and even before that, he was interviewing Deontay Wilder. He was close with Deontay Wilder. He was promoting from an internet standpoint, from a leader of a organization, Deontay Wilder, and the positive that Deontay Wilder is offering as a never before seen talent, be someone who stands for his people, and see supporting an actual American champion at this time. And when Deontay Wilder was champion, he was seeking the best of the best that were out there, and none of them would fight him. They all refused to fight Bomb Squad. He was the boogeyman in boxing. And when he could get someone in the ring, it happened to be past mandatory of Anthony Joshua. And that said, that was a name of note. That was Luis King Kong Ortiz, that all of the other heavyweights at the time ducked as well. And their excuse is he was past his prime, he was 1,000 years old, and he was there was no reason to fight him. But when Deontay got in the ring and Luis King Kong Ortiz posed some resistance, people were screaming like Paulie, or like Paulie, what's going on, guys? Why are people giving them extra time to check in on Deontay Wilder, not giving any credence to the fact that boxing in New York, in New York State Athletic Commission, they have specific rulings due to the severity of the accumulation of deaths in boxing, that they give the doctors time to check on the fighters, and they stop the clock while they do that. But getting to the casuals and Paulie Malignaggi, there was an uproar as if there was someone trying to protect Deontay Wilder, not criticizing New York State Athletic Commission's rules or their leniency with their doctors. But I don't want to make this a Deontay Wilder video. I just want to get into the fact that there was a extreme hate or disdain for the fact that he was a champion who wanted one face, one name, one champion. And everyone in boxing seemed to go against that. Wilder was not on the pound-for-pound list. We all, as a collective of boxing, looked at the pound-for-pound list for what it was. If everyone was the same weight, or if a small fighter was the same size as a heavyweight, could they compete or could they contend? So Wilder wasn't, and no other heavyweight was on the pound-for-pound list. But here comes a white man from the UK, Tyson Fury. He beats Deontay Wilder, who's constantly hated on. He's nothing. He's not on any pound-for-pound list. He's not the top fighter according to the casuals or the people who are behind the clear agenda. Wilder's the bum and Fury's the ultimate talent, right? Fury beats Wilder, and now Fury is suddenly the best fighter in the world. He's pound for pound. He's a heavyweight on the pound for pound list, and not even just a regular heavyweight, but a super heavyweight for that matter. So one point toward the clear agenda of boxing. Now that Wilder has announced his return, let's see how he's treated or received, since people have been demanding his return. That's casuals, that's haters, that's supporters. Let's see how the treatment is now that Fury is on a ban list and cannot come to this country, and Wilder's announced that he's coming back. Let's see how the climate of boxing changes then. But on to my next point, we have Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell Jr. Actually finishing a point with Deontay Wilder. Along with Deontay Wilder, they were both WBC champions and were the longest reigning champions at the time. Granted, I was a little frustrated with Gary Russell because of the public negotiations and not fighting Devin Haney after all of the transparency they let us in on. It was very clear that if he would have just agreed to whatever terms, that not only would it have been lucrative for him, more lucrative than the fight I'm about to mention, but also it would have guaranteed him more activity than we've seen of him from late. But Gary Russell has been in a recent fight. His most recent fight was with Mark Magsayo. Mark Magsayo was the only person who it seemed that the PBC would allow Gary Russell to fight, even though Gary Russell at the time was the champion who should be able to fight other champions in any mandatory that has come in front of him. The mandatory that had presented itself was Ray Vargas, who moved up from 122, essentially to avoid Cool Boy Steph. He was supposed to fight. He was mandated to fight Gary Russell Jr. The PBC steps in to protect him for some reason and has Gary Russell fight Manny Pacquiao fighter. So there's your reason. I mean, they birthed Santa Cruz, who's a Manny Pacquiao fighter. They're backing Mark Magsayo, who's a Manny Pacquiao fighter. But it seemed eerily similar to the situation where Gary Russell was supposed to fight Leo Santa Cruz. Leo Santa Cruz was being called out, was being hounded to the point where Gary Russell found Leo's dad. And that was basically the last attempt of him going at Leo, was he found his dad and walked him down and said, "Hey, I'm closer to your dad than I am to you. Why are you refusing to fight me?" and Al Heyman, who's in charge of both fighters. He advises both fighters. He's prevented that fight from happening for years, from since when the fight was supposed to actually happen, according to the sanctioning bodies, as well as the call outs, as well as the anticipation of the peak anticipation of both fighters. Said fight couldn't happen. But now that Gary Russell is out of the picture, we have Mark Magsayo versus Ray Vargas, and it's a headline card at that. So I just find it weird that and also this is most recent, that Ray Vargas is fighting Mark Magsayo. Before that, Leo Santa Cruz had a return fight where he was also, I believe, the main event against Michael Carvajal's nephew. I don't remember his name, but it seems like PBC has done a thing where they refuse to give Gary Russell, who was the champion at the time, the food he was demanding. And when he did have a fight, which he won with one hand clear against Mark Magsayo, they didn't give it to him. But when Tank fought the other Manny Pacquiao fighter and won with one hand, they gave it to him. And Tank gets all the praise in the world from the casuals in the boxing world because he's a product of Floyd Mayweather. Gary Russell, who's anti-Floyd Mayweather, gets the opposite treatment. On to my next point. We have Rigondeaux in the trifecta between Rigondeaux, Loma, and Nonito Donaire, basically. Let's not even say a trifecta. Let's just say the four guys: Nonito Donaire, Lomachenko, Rigondeaux, and Monster Inoue. So Rigondeaux, a two-time gold medalist, Lomachenko, a two-time gold medalist. Rigondeaux comes into the game. He has to have several fights before he gets any shot at a championship or any other former champions. Lomachenko, second fight out of the deal, he fights a champion. Lomachenko loses multiple times before he even gets to the undefeated record that Rigondeaux has sustained at the time, but the promotion was completely different. Bob Arum poured promotional dollars into Lomachenko. Every time Terrence Crawford fought, they mentioned Lomachenko. Every time any fighter fought, they mentioned Lomachenko and how great he is and how no one's ever seen anything like him. That's why he's the Matrix and he's magical. But the other two-time gold medalist that was also on the same promotional company got zero promotion. Zero promotion on any card that he fought on. How does Nonito and Monster Inoue tie into this? Well, the only name that Monster Inoue has on his resume, Lomachenko, the pound for pound list is the uniting factor here, by the way, but as well as Nonito Donaire. So Rigondeaux beats Nonito Donaire in his prime and is given no credit by the general boxing consensus. Even during the fight, they're saying he's boring and when is he going to turn it up after he's knocked down Nonito Donaire. And a prime Nonito Donaire, we're talking about the Filipino Flash. When Lomachenko was fighting Mariaga, oh my God, he's doing miraculous things. Look at this is amazing. When he's fighting Roman Lopez, oh look at this is ridiculous. But when Rigondeaux is giving you the actual boxing angles and sweet science and stopping people, it's not good enough. And still more fights than Lomachenko has, by the way. Nonito Donaire fights Monster Inoue when he's well into his, I think he's going into his 40s now. And he broke Monster Inoue's face, but Monster Inoue wins on the cards in a close fight, a tooth and nail fight, not even an easy fight, a reflection of the easy fight that Rigondeaux had, but he struggled with Nonito Donaire well over the hill and is immediately on the pound for pound list. And he's the only name that Monster Inoue fight. Yet no Yuya Inoue is a monster. And Lomachenko and Monster Inoue both were raised on the pound for pound list from fighting Rigondeaux and Nonito Donaire, who were both, if not on the pound for pound list at all, extremely low on the pound for pound list, and only placed on the pound for pound list to promote the fight between Lomachenko or Monster Inoue. That's the Rigo point. And my final point would be Devin Haney. If we look at Devin Haney, and the fact that he's called out the names, the people who they say sell, the Ryan Garcias, the Teofimo Lopez, the Gervonta Tank Davises, well before becoming a champion. Then when he became champion, it wasn't good enough. He was still calling the guys out, but he was a quote-unquote email champion. Now that he's undisputed, the man, the only champion, there is no way anyone could be a title holder with it be a legitimate title. Though he has all of the titles, he's still treated as though he's unwanted goods, or the hunter still. Though traditionally in boxing, once you become a champion, you are supposed to become the hunted, and not even just supposed to. That's the way the inertia, or even the momentum works. The momentum shift works in boxing. You now have everything that everyone could ever want, and that's typically how it is with one belt. But he has literally every belt. So now you have everything that everyone could want in your weight class, and no one will say your name. Now the whole world of boxing is acting as if Tank Davis didn't call out Devin Haney, and we didn't hear it. Like, it was on the Brian Custer podcast. We heard him say it. After you win, I want to fight you. He won. He's been having his foot on the gas. He's been, according to Bill Haney, and as we all see, been walking Tank down. They've been ghosting him, playing golf, not answering calls, saying they'll answer calls. And he's the champion, still calling these guys out, still applying pressure. And yet we look at Devin as if he's the fault, like the Muhammad Ali Act doesn't exist, in which the fighters have the power to make the best fights, regardless of contractual obligations, as if he hasn't signed a 3-fight deal with Bob Arum, like Bob Arum wouldn't want parts of a Tank Davis fight, or want the Lomachenko fight, or want the Teofimo fight, or want any of those fights. We ignore the fact that Tank Davis called out Devin Haney and act as if Tank didn't say it at all. It's similar to we act like Tank was ever really out of his contract when he stated in his post-press conference, the last thing he states, you don't even have to watch the whole thing, that he's still with Mayweather Promotions, but they act like they didn't hear that. But to stay to the point, Devin Haney is the undisputed champion at 135, and the first in the 4-belt era, and the world of boxing treats him as if he's a contender or still a prospect, as if people don't have to fight the champion, or as if mandatories don't exist, as if Tank Davis is not a mandatory for that belt, as if Lomachenko is not a mandatory for that belt, as if Ryan Garcia wasn't the first mandatory for the WBC, as if he didn't call out Teofimo Lopez. So boxing's current state and its clear agendas couldn't be clearer. Till next time, guys, please check out the Simple Truth Network. Check out Black Gents Grooming Company. Check out TrillTalk.net and everything. LDBC, LDBC.com. It's a code Black Affair is, was, and always will be. Till next time, guys. Deuces.